we're recording, mate. It is 4:11. Today, Friday, what's the date? The 11th. And we have some news, mate. Why don't you kick us off? Tell us what's happening in the life of NewCity.
Thank you, Pastor Mitch. Well, there's a whole bunch of things happening next week. First thing is next Thursday night is our monthly day of prayer, which starts off with a bunch of us kind of setting aside a little bit of time wherever we are through the day to pray for the Hunter, to pray for NewCity, and to pray for the things around us in the region. That's connecting with the Pray Hunter initiative. And so really want to encourage people to jump on board with that. And someone just jump in your car and start it? No.
Start the car next to me. Also have the dog in the car.
Oh, hey. Nice. So that's next Thursday. That is on. Beck will send out. There's like kind of like a prayer roster to get involved. Really encouraging thing that we can do together, and that finishes with a prayer walk at night. So that starts 7:30 in the CBD at Derek and Penny's house. There'll be details in our WhatsApp group and Facebook group for that. And again, that's just a great time to be actually physically present together and to walk around and pray for the things we see. We end up at the obelisk together, overlooking the city and all the lights, and you've got the ocean on one side and then the city on the other, and it's just a really spiritually enriching time. So I really want to encourage people to get involved in that. So that's happening on next Thursday.
And you were telling me we have a guest next Friday, a good friend of ours.
Yeah, we have a very good friend of ours, mate. We one of your ex-colleagues, Toddy Davis from Thornley Baptist. He is going to be preaching and teaching at our Zoom service next Friday night, but then also he's going to be sharing about some of the work he does with Horizons legal firm. And they're a not-for-profit legal aid firm that connects with people who can't access those services. And so brilliant story that he's got a heart for serving the community. And hopefully there's a few like-minded people up here. He's coming down from Sydney that could actually just get on board and maybe start something up here in Newcastle. Who knows?
He's a good speaker. He's a really good guy, and a really fantastic thinker, and has always been committed to justice and equity and fairness in the world. He's fantastic. So we commend him to you. I think I keep switching between mine and your faces. This is me now. I think the other thing coming up in October, we're going to be starting a series in the Gospel of John. The Gospel of John is, I think, one of the most interesting, but one of the deepest and richest and most complex kind of theological books in the Bible, I think. So I'm excited about jumping into that. So we'll kick that off in October, right, Nico?
Yeah, and we're keen, like Philippians, to kind of creatively connect and engage with it. Obviously, you want to like learn and get teaching from it, but also, we want to think of creative ways that we can maybe connect with it. So if you have creative skills or just some ideas that maybe someone else could do in our community, connect with myself and Mitch. It'd be awesome.
It'd be great. One more thing, I reckon, we have a survey coming out. Nico, take it away.
Yeah. So this COVID experience that we've all been going through has been a real, opportunity to sit and reflect, recalibrate, in almost, all forms, spheres of our life. And so us as a church, obviously have been kind of going through this together, and we really want to kind of help discern what's going on with us, with God, both individually and a community, how NewCity has gone, but then also what does it look like to into the next season? How is God shaping us for what's to come? And so the survey is a piece of that, to kind of an opportunity for us to all kind of share anonymously what God's been doing through our community, some of the things that we've been experiencing and thinking about interacting with NewCity, and what are some of the things that we think and we think moving forward. So that's going to be launched next Friday, and that's for everyone. It doesn't matter if you've been coming for a few weeks, you're coming for a few years, you've come once a month or once every few months, or you come every week. We want to kind of collectively come together and kind of hear the heartbeat that's that's going down.
Yeah, we have a survey data specialist in our church, and he's put it together, and he's assured us, thanks Al, he's assured us that we want so much like information from all people. So yeah, so even if you've just joined or you're just about to tap out, we want that information. So so everyone get on and do that when it comes out next Friday probably. Mate, we've taken way too long, so I reckon that's us.
Yeah. Bible reading is Mark 4, 35 to 41. Open it and get ready to read and pray through that.
That's great. Righto. Good chatting, Casa. Good chatting, everyone.
I love going to the beach. I love surfing, swimming, hanging out with friends on the sand. And I love being around the water when it's beautiful and still and tropical. But also, I also love going when there's big storms. And often when it's storming, I'll try and convince the kids to come with me to check out the big waves. It's often a hard sell. And as I was reflecting on this passage, I was reminded of the times when I've been out surfing and a storm would come, and within the space of a few minutes, the conditions would change in an instant. The waves would jack up a few feet and become a bit of a washing machine, and the scenario would just change dramatically. And as I was studying with this passage, I was reading of some historians that have actually been to the Sea of Galilee where this passage is set. And apparently in the car park there are warning signs to cars who are left there because in the past things have been damaged that's left in the car park through storms coming, through the quick changing of things and situations there. And so this famous passage is centered around Jesus calming the storm. And so it's set in the afternoon after Jesus has been teaching all day. He's been teaching parables and spiritual truths to the crowds and also to his disciples. And he says to his disciples, hey, let's get in the boat and let's go to the other side. And so they jump in the boat, a few other boats come with them. And as they're traveling across, a storm comes and things change very, very quickly. And so the boat starts apparently filling in with water, and naturally the disciples freak out. And Jesus is at the back of the boat sleeping on a cushion, as we're told. And the disciples come to Jesus and I imagine they shake him and they go, Teacher, don't you care if we drown? And then, I'm imagining Jesus gets up, stands at the front of the boat and lifts up his hands and commands the seas and the air and the storm to quiet and to be still. And they obey his word. And then he said, why are you afraid? Do you not have faith in me yet? And then, as you know, the disciples, astonished, terrified even, are kind of asking, who is this man? Even the sea and the storm obey his words. Famous passage. Most of us know it really well. And at first reading, and even on face value, I'm hesitant to say, come on, Jesus, it's a bit harsh. It seems like a totally appropriate time to be scared and to freak out, right? If I was in that situation, I'd be doing exactly the same thing. I think of Peter and Andrew, the disciples, and the others who we know are fishermen. So it's likely they're men of the sea. They know when the sea is bad and when things can get dangerous. And if they're kind of freaking out, then this seems like a legitimate time to show some concern for the situation. And yet Jesus kind of rebukes them, I guess. And there's a whole bunch of questions that kind of arise when I think of this passage. What is going on? And I think this passage is about, danger and rescue on face value, but there's something deeper happening, particularly something that is quite obvious to the original hearers and no doubt the disciples, as they would have kind of pondered and thought about who is this Jesus teacher. For the Hebrew people, the sea represented chaos and the unknown. You think in the first century particularly, the sea was a deep, dark place. And there's scriptures and legends that talk to kind of sea monsters that would roam the deep. And it was kind of the source of chaos. And then God, particularly in the Hebrew scriptures, that God was the one who could bring order to the chaos, who was the one who tamed the seas. Heaps of Psalms talk about this. Psalm 65, and it says, God, you still the roaring of the seas, the roaring of the waves. I think of Exodus, right, when God parts the seas so the Israelites can cross, part of the big rescue story that the Hebrew people would remember and rehearse. And then Genesis 1, right? Genesis 1, the very first verse, where you see the Spirit of God hovering over the dark and deep, unformed waters, about to bring order in creating the world. And so, no doubt, the original hearers of this story would be kind of connecting the dots where Jesus is actually not just rescuing the disciples from this storm, but revealing who he is. He is the God that brings order out of chaos. He is the God that has authority over the wind and the waves and the weather. And so, you see the disciples in the last verse, in verse 41, and, their initial reaction is not thanks and gratitude because they've been rescued from the storm. There's this cognitive dissonance as they're wrestling with who is their teacher. Is our teacher God, the God that we've heard and worshipped and been brought up believing? And so Jesus is just doing this beautiful object lesson where he is showing and revealing who he is, and he's also preparing them for what's to come. And this is really important because the disciples, they come to Jesus when the storm comes and said, "Teacher, don't you care?" And then Jesus, shows that he is God through his miraculous taming of the storm and says, "I'm God, of course I care. Do you trust me? Why are you scared?" And this is key in what's to come for the disciples, as Jesus prepares them to follow him, as he goes to the cross, as he faces all the trials and challenges. This is early on in the disciples' journey. This chapter alone, Jesus has called them, and there's been a bit of teaching, but the rubber really hasn't hit the road yet. And so this is kind of one of the first key kind of challenges for the disciples in Mark's gospel. And so Jesus is preparing them to trust and have faith in him being the Messiah, as they are about to embark in the storms and chaos that is about to engulf them. We know that many of the disciples rose to this kind of challenge by Jesus. The church was birthed through persecution and trials and challenges. You just have to read the book of Acts. I think of us in this time, in this pandemic, and particularly the church and people of faith have grown and thrived in times where things are chaotic, through pandemics. In the 3rd century, history books tell us that Rome was brought to its knees because of pandemics, but it was at the same time that the church actually started to spread and grow and prosper in spite of the pandemic. I've been doing a bit of reading into the Spanish flu, right, and there's reports that churches in the United States, had to face all the kind of lockdowns and kind of gathering bans that we're facing at the moment, and many of them embraced this and kind of encouraged their congregants to reclaim the altar at home and worship at home with family and friends, and that started a house worship movement. Even a bit closer to home in Newcastle for the Spanish flu. It came here a few years later, in around 1919 and 1920. And, apparently 500 people died. It came off a cargo boat from Sydney. And, the old story sounds familiar, maybe. But many Christians and churches, particularly Christian women, rose to the occasion and helped, supported people going through hardship, supported hospitals that were over capacity, providing food and clothing and home care, whilst having to wrestle with all the things that are happening in a pandemic. That's some kind of storm, right? And we would say we're in a bit of a cultural storm now with everything that's happening. Pandemics apparently last a minimum of 2 years, and so we've probably got a little bit of time to go in this. But as we reflect back to the story of Jesus being the God who brings order in the storm, doesn't necessarily promise that he will calm all the storms, though eventually they'll calm, but he is the one who brings order throughout it. And so I guess the challenge for us is, are we going to be people who turn back to Jesus, the God of order in these times of chaos? Are we going to be a church and churches who actually have deeper faith, deeper commitment to the truth of God and his presence, and open to what he is going to do? And like the people that have gone before us, are we going to be people who actually thrive as the church, who see God revealing himself in new and beautiful ways and seeing his kingdom come like he said he would? Amen.